lower the IQ. And more recently, Zhang has reported the same thing for plasma levels, the blood. And there's all his data. I asked him to send it to me. This is all the children in his study. And what he measured there is the children's IQ against the level of fluoride in the blood. Remember, the blood, that's the last point before the fluoride hits the brain is in the blood. Okay? The higher the level of fluoride in the blood, the lower the IQ of the child. That strengthens the finding considerably, in my view. So, we've got that study in your documents as well, 2011. Now, this is what Philip Ranji, who's a very famous epidemiologist, toxicologist, he did pioneering work on mercury. He said, fluoride seems to fit in with lead, mercury, and other poisons that cause chemical brain drain. He's just written a book called Chemical Brain Drain. The effect of each toxicant may seem small, but the combined damage on a population scale can be serious, especially because the brain power of the next generation is crucial to all of us. Very important quote here. I want to explain this in pictures. IQ, like any human trait, is normally distributed. Scientific jargon, normally distributed. This is the bell-shaped curve. So whether you're talking about height, weight, whatever, the normal trait, what this means is that the average person is going to cluster around an average value, which in this case, IQ is set at 100 for the average person. Now what I want you to note is the two tails of this curve. Now this green area, this area under the curve here, is the fraction of the whole population that is very bright or genius level. They have an IQ of over 170. That green area, the area under the curve, is the fraction of geniuses out of our whole population. And at this end, this magenta area is the fraction of the population which is mentally handicapped, under an IQ of 70. Now let's shift the curve by 5 IQ points. Now, that means that most people would go from 100 to 95, the average person would go from 100 to 95. Now, if you were a parent and you had 2 siblings, one with an IQ of 900 and you were IQ of 95, you could not tell the difference. If you're a school teacher, you couldn't tell the difference. You'd have to do standard tests to elicit this difference. So, what is happening to the average person is not visible to us. But look what happens to the two tails when you do that shift. Look at it. Your very bright or geniuses are halved. The area under the curve is halved here. You halve the number of geniuses in your society. And over here, you are doubling the number of mentally handicapped. So something that does not look significant at the average level is very significant in terms of what it's doing to 2 critical populations. And that spells out huge ramifications for the economy and the social life of the United States. And we should not, for a second, knowingly contemplate doing that to the whole population. And certainly not for something as trivial as trying to save a small amount of tooth decay, especially when we know that there are other ways of doing it, and most countries in the world are using these different methods. So, I could go through a summary of the 10 ugly facts I suspected. Well, I'll do it very quickly. So first of all, you've got the Brunel and Carlos study, big study, the biggest done in the United States, very little difference in tooth decay, which wasn't even shown to be statistically significant. Then you have the several modern studies which shows when you stop fluoridation, tooth decay doesn't go up. And then when you look at it on an individual exposure level, there's no relationship between tooth decay and how much fluoride is swallowed. Then the explanation for that is that fluoride works topically on the outside of the tooth, not from inside the body. Then you have the NRC report, which shows that babies, amongst other subsets, are exceeding safe reference doses, drinking water at 1 part per million. Fluoridation may actually be killing a few young children, males each year, with osteosarcoma, which hasn't been refuted. That our kids are being overexposed to fluoride, grossly overexposed to fluoride. And an extensive database shows that fluoride damages the brain, and that the threshold for this, 1.9 parts per million, offers no adequate margin of safety to protect all our children. And by the way, there's two other factors here which make what I just said even stronger. I do not believe that those children in these Chinese villages were using fluoridated toothpaste. So we're actually getting more fluoride from there. Nor do I believe that those parents were bottle feeding their babies. They were probably breastfeeding their babies. So it's probably worse than I have intimated so far. And then finally, these studies have been made visible by the team from Harvard University, and it's very difficult for people to continue this state of denial, but sadly they do. So my challenge to the promoters, okay, so you don't have the guts to defend your position in open public debate, because I'm such a great debater. All right? You don't have that, but in the safety of your offices, your air-conditioned offices, at taxpayers' money, now take this CD with all the arguments and the documents made absolutely transparent and available to you, and come back and tell the people of Sonoma County, give us the science which says you can ignore those 10 ugly facts. And if they can't do that, then there's no way on God's earth that anybody should allow them to fluoridate your drinking water. I end my text.
Here, here.
What? 717?
The first gal, if anyone wants to write it down, or you can read it, but you want to go ahead and say if I can't actually read the writing.
I wanted to find out what kind of fluoride was in the Zane study, whether it was added, chemical, or was it natural fluoride in the wells, like calcium fluoride?
It wasn't added fluoride.
It was calcium fluoride that was in the wells.
All the studies, all 43 studies were done with natural fluoride.
Okay, is that easier to get out of the body to excrete the calcium fluoride rather than the industrial strength?
No, it's not a question of excretion, it's the other way around. If you're exposed to fluoride at the same time as you're exposed to a lot of calcium, the calcium is to a certain extent protective because it's not taken up. In other words, if there's a lot of calcium ions in your stomach or whatever, when the absorption is taking place, the calcium links to the fluoride and it comes out in your feces and it doesn't get into the bloodstream. Not all of it, so it's slightly protective. And then maybe why the Brits, who drink a lot of tea, which has a lot of fluoride in it, have got away with this for years because they always put milk in their tea, whereas Americans put lemon in their tea. So, be warned.
Okay.
Yeah, different.
Okay, next question.
Our local politicians, why don't they get it? Who's pressuring them? What makes them so in such denial? What's the force behind it?
I go into it. I'm going to let you read what I've written there. There is a denial. This is what I call the psychology of promotion. I think there are many factors. I think dentists, by and large, are very proud of fluoridation. They see it as their contribution to public health. Most dentists do not have the time that I have to read the literature. So it's easy to continue the denial And there's several other reasons that I go into. There's a concern about liabilities. There's a worry, I think, with the public health community, there's a worry about losing credibility. And if they lose credibility on fluoridation, then I think they fear that they're going to lose credibility on other public health practices. So there are a number of things, and there are definitely some economic interests. Obviously, the phosphate fertilizer industry wants to keep getting rid of this hazardous waste. I don't think it's enough to explain what's going on for all these years. The sugar lobby is very keen to have fluoridation continue. They said in 1949, we need to find a way to reduce tooth decay without reducing sugar consumption. And that remains to this day. It's a distraction from, with having fluoridation available, it's an distraction from parents. And of course there are the economic interests that Chris Bryson revealed in the fluoride deception. And I think it's probably even worse today than Chris described back in the 1940s and 50s. The thing is, what Chris said, what Chris documented, there was collusion between the US Public Health Service and an entity called the Fluorine Lawyers Association. But the Fluorine Lawyers Association was involved in protecting industry from lawsuits, and there were more lawsuits on fluoride air pollution than any other pollutant at that time. They were also, I think, concerned about what they were doing to their workers. Now run the clock forward, and today, if it's shown that at 1 part per million, 1 milligram per litre, we can show damage, what does it say about the fluoride exposure of people working in the aluminum industry, the phosphate fertilizer industry? They're getting much higher exposure than that, so liabilities. And that may explain why it is that the American Council on Science and Health, ACSH, which is funded by industry, has never found a chemical that it didn't like, and absolutely pushes fluoridation. They are representing their industrial clients. And I don't know which ones, because they have support from the oil industry, the chemical industry, you name it, food industry, and so on.
Over there, water.
Water?
Non-fluoridated.
This is more of a comment, something that was said earlier. Why do some of our politicians want to support such a dangerous practice which is detrimental to our health? I believe they want to have something that they can point to when and if they run for higher office, a socially feel-good issue that is going to resonate with voters. And I think that it's up to us to tell them this is not resonating.
Very good. Absolutely.
That was kind of a comment, not a question, I think.
Dr. Connet, wonderful presentation this evening. Question. We're starting to hear attempts to deal with the topical and ingestion problem. And we're hearing it suggested that if you drink fluoride and get it in your system, you'll then have fluoride in your saliva, which will then be giving you the topical effect. Is there anything to support this, and where would we find the information?
Yeah, they're desperate, okay? When the CDC in 1999 said that the predominant benefit was topical, not systemic, the opposite, the promoters went into a panic. They had to come back with something. The first thing they came back with to say, well, it's good that it's topical because this means it helps everybody throughout life, not just children, but everybody. And secondly, they have this tortuous argument, the promoters, that if you, by the way, first of all, do a little experiment when you get home to see how much topical treatment you get from drinking fluoridated water. Here's the experiment. Take a glass of water between your finger and your thumb and drink it. Where does it go? It hits your tongue, it hits the back of your front teeth, and then it's down your throat. And unless you drink like this, you do not get any topical treatment of any significance from drinking fluoridated water. So hence, working backwards to maintain this practice, they have this torturous explanation. You drink the fluoride, it exposes every tissue in the body, of course causing no harm, and eventually gets into the salivary glands, and eventually gets into the saliva, which reaches a concentration of 0.016 parts per million, and that is what's supposed to have all these magic effects on the teeth. And they argue, oh, you bathe the teeth all day long with this 0.016, and that is what lowers tooth decay. Now, they got some studies from Australia, which they claim that distinguishes between the topical benefit and the systemic benefit. There's still some dentists are still arguing for systemic benefits. They're still arguing for have this epidemiology. But the trouble is that these epidemiological studies are coming out of Adelaide, the University of Adelaide, whose dental department is supported by Colgate toothpaste.
The microphone.
Oh.
Hi, thank you so much, Paul. That was wonderful. My question to you with the County Board of Supervisors in your meetings, have you been able to request or get from them the reports from the agencies that they would be purchasing this fluoride from that would show that the fluoride is indeed a pharmaceutical grade and indeed is beneficial for reducing cavities and is safe for the public drinking water? Have you ever, in all of your travels, gotten such a letter from the agencies that are supplying them?
Now, the answer is simply, there are many people in Canada and the United States that are asking for these studies. Show us the studies which have demonstrated that it's safe. Show us the studies which demonstrate that it's effective. By the way, they do not claim that these chemicals are pharmaceutical grade. They don't. They acknowledge that these are waste products from the phosphate fertilizer industry. They call them byproducts, make it sound better. But they argue that by the time these are diluted, 180,000 to 1 dilution, that none of the contaminants cause any problems, and the hexafluorosilicic acid completely breaks down to free fluoride ion. So that's basically what they argue, but they don't deny that this is a hazardous waste product of the fertilizer industry. And let me explain. They can't dump this into the sea by international law. They can't dump it locally, it's too concentrated. So how do they get away with it? The answer is, in American hazardous waste law, if a company, if a chemical industry makes a waste product, even if it's hazardous, if someone purchases it from them, it becomes a product. It's no longer treated as a hazardous waste. And you can understand that from the chemical industry's point of view and from the EPA's point of view. It makes sense. You want industry X to purchase the waste from industry Y so that we don't have a hazardous waste problem. We're being as efficient as we possibly can with these toxic chemicals. Understandable. But when that law is used to take a hazardous waste, make it into a product, and then dump it into the public drinking water, it's gone mad. It's mad. No. Not that I'm aware of, no.
And this might help you understand. When we were with two of the supervisors on Friday, for the 8th time, I asked Rita Scardacci for the safety studies on the hydrofluorosilicic acid, which she keeps saying, oh yeah, I'll go get those for you. This will be 1 year and 2 months. I have asked over and over that there aren't any. So, no, there aren't. We were with McGuire and David Rabbit, separately.
We got good receptions for these people. I don't think they're the enemy. I really don't. This is my feeling, and obviously it's conjecture, but my feeling is that they would be only too happy not to fluoridate Sonoma County if they could get it out. But I also get the feeling that they don't want to go head to head and challenge the authority of the public health people. They are used to relying on public health people to give them all kinds of advice. And I don't think they feel it's very healthy or safe to go head to head with the public health people. But I think that if there's a technical reason why they shouldn't fluoridate, and I think there are technical reasons because of this peculiar 10 municipality agreement on water, which took 8 years to reach, going ahead with fluoridation could reopen that. And I don't think many municipalities want to reopen that.
He's talking, the camera people want you to have that.
Oh, I see. They want me.
Sorry.
Okay.
So, and then,
Do you want that again?
Yes.
Okay, I'll say that again. I get the feeling that if we gave them a technical out, if the county supervisors were shown that this was formidably expensive, or formidably complicated, or it would trigger other problems like having to reopen the agreement that took 8 painful years to reach between all the water authorities, I think they'd gladly grab it. What I don't think they want to do is to be seen to be challenging the authority of the public health people. Heaven knows they should be challenged, but
she had a quick question, and then I'm going to go over here. Okay. But she was waiting to ask her.
I'm honored to be amongst you, thank you. I have a lot of thoughts as you were telling your lecture, and like for example, what does the position of the United Nations have this, I mean...
no. Okay, then what's the position
That's one question.
of the United Nations? Well, actually, an agency of the United Nations, UNICEF, has pointed out, there's a statement from UNICEF which is highly questioning of fluoridation. And the reason is this: UNICEF is dealing in countries which have the problem of natural fluoride, endemic fluorosis areas in India and China and parts of Africa. So they see that, and they therefore are in a position where they would like to discourage water fluoridation. But you can read the statement for itself. The big problem for us is the World Health Organization, which was nobbled in 1959. And you have to make a distinction. Every time you hear someone say Center for Disease Control, World Health Organization, you think of these mighty organizations. But let me stress, when it comes to fluoridation, these discussions and decisions are in the hands of the Oral Health Division. In the CDC, that's 30 people out of 20,000. And these 30 people are dentally trained. They don't have a toxicologist amongst them. They've got no medical experts amongst them. And when they make statements, they are essentially of a conflict of interest because they promote fluoridation. That's how they see themselves. And the same with the World Health Organization. It's the Oral Health Division of the World Health Organization. And the head of that Oral Health Division is a guy called Peterson. And he's big buddies with Michael Lennon, who is the chairman of the British Fluoridation Society. And a recent review by the World Health Organization had 4 experts. 3 of them were known to be pro-fluoridation. 2 from the University of Cork in Ireland, which has mandatory fluoridation, and Michael Lennon, chairman of the British Fluoridation Society. And these 4 people wrote a glowing report of water fluoridation. Self-fulfilling prophecy. It's sad. It's sad when you know this kind of stuff, because how easily people are tricked, are deceived.
Where's the funding coming from?
she was next to comment.
I just wanted to say that all politics is local, and with your boards of supervisors, etc., all the way on up to the federal government, the American, the state, the local dental associations donate to political campaigns, and I would suggest that the supervisors are more afraid of losing their funding than they are of the public health department. And in addition to that, the chemical companies are all donating to their campaigns, and that seems to be what drives the whole country.
I agree.
And then, I just thought, like, you know, what she said, what we can do locally, they can't put this in either without the money. It's not ratepayer, taxpayer money, according to AB 733. It has to come from foundations, The first 5 money. So look, right now, I happen to know for a fact, Lynn Silverchalfen is applying for the $4.1 million in 2014 of first 5 money. Now that money this year was used on dental clinics and more chairs throughout the county and all sorts of preventative ways with dental health care, the way it should be spent. So if you write your board of supervisors and say, good job this year, keep going and spending it that way, and then what we're doing at Clean Water Sonoma-Marin is we're writing letters to first 5 and queering that grant. Because you know, if the community doesn't want the grant to go that way, they won't let it go that way. So we could stop some of that money. We could stop $8.2 million of that money.
Absolutely, and to go back to this gentleman's position in blue over here, absolutely, when you say we have to let them know that they're what they consider to be the safe position of going along with the Department of Health and going along with whatever lobbyists, they have to realize it's a dangerous position when it comes to the public. But only if you guys can educate more people. We cannot win it with the number of people in this room. But if this is the starting point, I'd like to say this, affecting change is like driving a nail through a piece of wood, okay? The role of the expert is to sharpen the nail. And hopefully I've sharpened a few nails tonight. But I cannot push that nail through the piece of wood. I could be the most brilliant person since Einstein, but I could not possibly persuade these county supervisors to do it because I say so. But if you, what we need is the hammer of public opinion to drive the nail home. So I've done my job. I've sharpened the nail. You've got the backup with the book. You've got the backup with our webpage. You've got the backup with this CD. Now educate your friends, educate your neighbors. At the moment, they're not being informed from the media. The Press Democrat, we've already been into that. They're not getting much from any other source. It's us or nobody. Yes?
Yes, Dr. Connet, if the Board of Supervisors will be voting for the fluoridation process to go forward, and let's say it does, there would have to be a contract with whoever is the company that the fluoride is being purchased from. Who in the county, what person would be responsible for signing the contract for purchasing this fluoride?
I don't know that.
It's the Sonoma County Water Agency who would have to be handling, and they're at the poor place of being told what to do by the Board of Supervisors because they don't want to implement this.
You know, one of the great tricks that they pulled off here is that there is no federal agency, that takes responsibility for the liabilities of fluoridation. The FDA has never regulated fluoride, never, for ingestion. Toothpaste, yes, but ingestion, no. The EPA does not regulate water fluoridation. The EPA regulates contaminants, not additives. Okay? They have no say in water fluoridation. And the CDC is only interested in promoting fluoridation. And again, none of those federal agencies accept any responsibility. It's worse, they've actually shunted off the responsibility to a quasi-private entity called the National Sanitation Foundation, which is responsible for assuring the safety of the chemicals, of meeting certain standards. But they have a disclaimer that they do their best to get the standards right, but they accept no liability. And the chemical companies that sell this product accept no liability. It's in there, they don't accept liability. In other words, according to what I could see, nobody has responsibility except when the community adopts fluoridation, then they are the ones who have the responsibility. And in your case, it could be the California, because when they pass that legislation requiring people to fluoridate, I would think that that means that the liabilities go to the state, which is worrying.
Trying to get.
And also, before I forget, all these
Let
agents.
him ask this question, then I'll run back.
Okay.
Well, actually, it's a bit of a comment. And question. At the meeting with Supervisor Rabbit, there were dentists, MDs, Dr. Connet, and it was in the health department, and it was pretty clear that the supervisor in the health department had no interest in hearing the science at all. What was behind it? That for them, it was a done deal, and I think that's what we have to be looking at. The Board of Supervisors pretty much have concluded that fluoride is an issue. So Supervisor Rabbit did say to us, come up with alternatives. Give us an idea of what else we can do. What are our choices? If we don't have anything that satisfies their qualification of choice, fluoridation is the default. So that's where our reality is.
And I think that's good. I think one of the things that you should set up right now and see if you can get some volunteers to set up a committee to come forward with a concrete plan on alternatives. And I can give you what I would suggest on the alternatives, to come back with a concrete plan. But I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly what he said. Show me the alternatives, otherwise essentially it's going to go through. The other thing I would say is that, you know, they make a big meal out of all these endorsers, these agencies that endorse fluoridation. Isn't it interesting that not one of those endorsing agencies accepts responsibility? So the trick is to use your authority to get communities to adopt fluoridation, but to do so without giving them protection against any liabilities. That's the trick that's being played here. And isn't it interesting that not one of those entities will come out and debate me in public? Not one. Let me give you a little story. In April of 2003, the EPA phoned me up and said, every year we have a science fair in Washington, D.C., and every year we have a debate. And this year we'd like to have a debate on water fluoridation. Would you debate the issue? I said, yes, I'd be happy to debate it. Well, hold on, we'll get back to you. They then spent the next 5 weeks to get somebody in the country to debate it. They couldn't get one person from government or one person from any of these professional bodies to debate it. Now, what does that tell you? It's not that I'm brilliant, no. It's they don't have a case. They don't have the science.
Okay, next question.
Actually, a couple comments. Ugly fact number 11, babies have no teeth, so to medicate them is medical malpractice. The other thing is, years ago, I spoke to our city council, I live in Union City, about chloramine and fluoridation, and mentioned the material safety data sheet, how fluoride is a poison, and it had the skull and crossbones. The material safety data sheet came off of the website, and weeks later it came back with a big X. The skull and the crossbones is no longer on the material safety data sheets. The last comment I'd like to make is Dr. Dean Burke did a study on 10 cities that added fluoride and compared with 10 cities that didn't. Prior to the fluoridation, the number of people that got cancer increased at the same rate among the 20 cities. After fluoridation, the cancer rates in the fluoridated cities increased rapidly when compared to the non-fluoridated cities. The breast cancer rate in women almost doubled.
Yeah, there are certainly some questions about those studies, and that's been it's been an ongoing debate. Those two gentlemen actually defended their thesis in 3 courts of law and won in all 3. The judges sided with them against the other experts. But then the decision was thrown out on jurisdictional grounds. But let me just one word of warning. They will always come back with the skull and crossbones and this. Now, you're talking about the neat chemical. The hexafluorosilicic acid is horrible stuff. And yes, the guys in those water plants have to wear protective clothing. It's horrible stuff. But they dilute that down 180,000 to 1. And therefore it is dishonest to apply the skull and crossbones to the final thing. We are back to what I discussed this evening. You've got to look at the studies done at 1 parts per million, or 2 or 3 or 4, which is what the National Research Council reviewed. And I think that when you do that, this practice is unacceptable. But please, it's an emotional argument to use the skull and crossbones, because the same applies to chlorine. We add chlorine to drinking. Chlorine is horrendous in its neat form. But it's not so horrendous when it's been diluted down. Not that there are no problems with using chlorine, but we have to be more... don't waste time. Don't waste time with arguments that they can knock down. And they will say everything is toxic at high doses. But I think the way to get them is what I started with. Look at the level in mother's milk. 0.004. Don't tell me that 1 part per million is perfectly safe. It's 250 times higher than nature intended for a newborn baby. That's a more powerful argument, more difficult for them than the skull and crossbones.
So this is our last question. We've got to wrap it up because I have an only agreement to be here till 8, and I just have some concluding remarks and a request of all of you.
By the way, because we're running out of time, you've been a fantastic audience. Really fabulous. You have hardly moved since you've been in here.
One last thing, I find it really incredible that the supervisors have said that we haven't given them an alternative plan when I and several others have written them and spoken out in public forums saying that we want more dental education, more mobile dental clinics. That's a much better extension of the public funds than putting this crap in our water. And Donna, didn't you say last time that the overwhelming number of correspondence that were being received by the supervisors were running overwhelmingly against this? Shouldn't they pay attention to that?
They even admit that it is.
Yeah.
So I'm going to come up here now. Okay. So I want to thank you all, but I have a request. It's not free to get him to come here, but I want to tell you something, a little happy note. It's his birthday yesterday. He's 73. He spent his birthday with us. So if you want to, he would be authorized to say you can give a birthday present of a donation or whatever. This room is not free. If we want to follow in the positive steps of Portland, Oregon, if we have to, and the next step is doing a poll in this community, and that costs money, and that's a lot of bake sales. So if all those t-shirts and signs and bumper stickers with little tiny donations that to get them, if that stuff starts disappearing, we get closer to doing that poll, and that's what we're going to try to be doing.
And don't let's get confused, but I do not charge. Okay?
No,
this is not
plain. We pay for plain.
This is the rental of the room, my airfare, all that kind of stuff. So if you got some money, that would be great. Not me.
The CDs are out there, and if you could, we can't sell anything here. If you a couple of dollars a donation, you can have the CD. I mean, what a bargain! My gosh. So if those aren't free either, but for a couple of dollars, we've had someone help us provide them for very little. Yes.
Do you think it would do any? I'm going to cancel my subscription to the PD with the notation that they are not covering this information.
That would be great.
I know.
That would be terrific. Let's get a few of those letters in. Please cancel your subscription to the Press Democrat, even if you don't have a subscription, cancel it. Let them know that you're teed off as you should. Yeah, quickly. This is going to be quick.
I want to give you my ammunition that from this point on in all of us, from long time as a political activist since the early 60s, I suggest when we confronting a giant like this with so much greed and money involved, we got to go to another giant and make them fear this thing. So from this point on, whether or not it is backed up by the science of it. I suggest from this point on that we say the major industry of Sonoma County, and this we said to the Board of Supervisors, that the major industry of Sonoma County of wine and tourism and beer will be severely negatively impacted if we put fluoridation in the water. And that this thing is going to destroy the image of the wine and beer and tourism industry of Sonoma County.
The owners of the Press Democrat also own the Business Journal. So yeah, I mean, we got to get to them. Okay, so I really thank you all, and please, CDs are out there.